Welcome to the Find My Catalyst podcast. We all have problems we're looking to solve, and we know that there are solutions out there, but we struggle with this. How do we find the solution? Where does the nudge come from to help us take the next step and start solving tough problems? This podcast is designed to help you find your catalyst and take that next step. I'm Mike Simmons, and today I'm really excited to share a conversation that I had recently with Vincent Pugliese. Vincent is the author of The Wealth of Connection, and I was fortunate enough to spend some time with Vince at Mastermind earlier this year. We'll talk a little bit about that. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. This discussion, as all conversations that are on the podcast, is brought to you by the Catalyst Game Plan. It's our approach to goal setting and execution, helps you simplify goal setting and execution. You can find more information about it at findmycatalyst.com. Vince, it is awesome to see you. I've been fortunate enough to see you now twice in the past 7 months.
7 months?
7 months or 6 months. We saw each other at the Thing in Orlando in November. My math is right. It's May. Might have been 7 months. Might be 6, 7, 8 months, whatever.
Yeah.
I just saw you at Lee Cockrell's Mastermind down in Florida. Again, we were both in Florida, and you live in Florida now. Why'd you move to Florida?
First of all, I think we're only allowed to see each other in Orlando, apparently. I think that's it, right?
That might be it.
That might be it. What got us to move to Florida? We would travel every winter. So we run our own business, lifestyle business from anywhere, and we homeschool our 3 kids. So for the past 5 years before we moved here, we would travel for the winter. So essentially it was like Christmas would come, we'd take down the tree, we'd look around and go roll in the snow, kids, because we're leaving. And then New Year's Day, we'd be on the road and we would be gone for 3 to 4 months. And we'd come back as everything started thawing out. And we would go on some cross-country trips. Sometimes we would go south. And then 2021, we went to Florida for 4 months just to do the west coast of Florida. That was it. Like, it's not going to be a giant trip. It's going to be all long. We're going to go down to the Keys. We're going to go up and down. And about halfway through the trip, we looked at each other and we're like, should we get a vacation place? Like, this is beautiful. We loved it here. And then, no joke, like a day or a couple of days later, we looked at each other and we were like, we should just move here. And that was it. So we kept looking at houses, but that's when the housing market was going bananas.
Sure.
Like, ridiculous. Yeah. You'd see a house and then you look a minute later and it's gone. Or if it wasn't gone, it was up 50,000. I was like, what is going on here? Picking the wrong time to move. And so, but we decided, so we get back home from that trip. And no joke. So I'm usually the one that's more aggressive in our relationship. Elizabeth's much more steady, much more uses her brain more. I use emotion more, right? And we get home and I go upstairs to our bedroom and she's packing the first day that we're home. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, we're not backing out of this. I said, you're serious? She's like, we're literally started packing. Our house was on the market within a month and a half. And we were renting in Venice 3 months later, looking for a house. And then 3 months after that, we had bought a house. And now we're in Bradenton, Sarasota, and just loving it. That's it. Awesome. That's the story.
It's awesome. And what I loved was the quick, immediate response of, hey, there's no turning back. We're all in now. Let's go figure out how we make it work.
Well, because you learned from your past and your mistakes. We went to Arizona 3 years earlier on one of the trips, and we're like, everywhere we go, we want to move there, right? We're one of those people, and we're like that. And so we were in Gilbert, Arizona, Tempe. We loved it, and we were going to move. And we got back, and we talked ourselves out of it. We were like, yeah, it's going to be hot and this and so far from everybody. And we did like what so often we do. It's like, yeah, that sounds good, but we're not going to. So after having gone through that and looking back, like, that would have been awesome. We could have done that. That would have been a great adventure. The second time, I think we were both, and Elizabeth led it. Like, we're going to be really lame if we do this again, because we tell our friends we're going to move and then we don't. Like, you're kind of a lot of talk. You're not really doing it. So my friend Ken Carfagna was like, when we were moving, he goes, you're really doing it. He's like, I figured you meant it, but you really weren't. Like, you're really, like, we're literally on the road. He's like, you're doing it. Like, it's kind of how we like to live life and how we like to teach. Like, if you want something, you go and make it happen. And I don't want to have regrets. So we absolutely don't. So that's how we wound up down here.
Why do people struggle with that? Struggle with the action? I think
there's way too much worry about what can go wrong as opposed to actually thinking about what can go right. Right? It's like, oh, but there's the cost to it. And every single time there's been a cost involved, we've figured out a way to make it happen. Either you do without, which, for me, it was always like, when was I very happy in life? I think back on life. I was very happy when I was in college. Guess what? I was absolutely broke. I was looking in my seat cushions for money to buy a Whopper Junior, and I was very happy. So if I could be happy with less money way back then, why can't I be happy now when we have more money than we did then? And I think so often we're like, oh, we're going to lose out on this. If you learn that you can do with very little and still be happy, you're going to make different decisions than if you're held up by, well, there's this standard of living. And what happens is you rise to the occasion when you need something. You just do it. You make things happen. You create things. And I think so often we don't get that confidence because we don't put ourselves through the grind to actually make it happen.
What's the conversation with Elizabeth look like when you're both stressed about those kind of decisions? So you talk about, hey, I'm going to be more emotional. I'm going to jump in. Elizabeth is going to be a little bit more, probably more logical, more steady state kind of thing. What do those conversations look like to create the alignment so there's this confidence and comfort in moving things forward? It's
usually her being like, everything's cool. And that's what I'm so fortunate with her in a million different ways. But she's always the rock. She's always the steady of like, I'm not stressed about these things. I don't know why you are, but I'm not. And that really eases my things because I have these expectations. I had a different life than she did. Like she grew up, like she lost her dad when she was 14. So I don't know what that's like. But at the same time, she never grew up worrying about, even though they didn't have very much money, she never grew up worrying about money. They were always fine the way it was. It was a very steady life. But I grew up in a world where everything was good. And then literally overnight, my dad was laying on the couch face down. I'm 15 years old and I go to school and he's face down. I'd never seen him like that before. I don't know what's going on. I think maybe he's tired. And then I get home from school and he's still laying on the couch face down. And my mom, I get emotional talking about. My mom pulls me into the kitchen and says, and she's crying. And she says that, my dad has a business and a business partner. And last night, the business partner went into the accounts and emptied out all the money. This is 1986, 185, $135,000. Oh, wow. Now, $135,000 in 2023 is a lot of money. It was really a lot of money in 1985. That was all their money. That was all the money to pay for jobs. They did construction. There was hazmat. There was all these things that it was to cover other people's, contracting salary, all this stuff gone overnight like that. Within days, the business is gone because they can't do the jobs. His partner left town, didn't know where he was, left with the money. And my dad was left to figure everything out. Lawsuits coming in every week. We came within weeks of losing our house. I was pretty sure my parents were getting divorced because they were fighting every moment. And I'm 15, 16 years old, right? And I'm kind of a moron to begin with. And then I'm dealing with this stuff and I don't want to be home. I don't want to be anywhere near it because it's just madness. Ruined our relationship for a good 2 decades because it was so much tension and everything back and forth. So no matter how well I do financially, that's still inside of me. I still worry about money when I don't need to worry about money.
Yeah.
And I wish it wasn't the case. And I wish there was, and it's better and better every year that goes by. But there'll be times that I'll wake up at 2:00 in the morning worrying about something that legitimately, if you just looked at it, you'd be like, what are you worrying about? But I worry about it. And she didn't have that. So she's the level of like, hun, we're good. Right. So that's, emotional but that's like internally why I get a certain way and she doesn't, because I still remember losing everything and just about to lose everything. So losing a handful of whatever it is can make you feel like, and I think a lot of people relate to this, can make you feel like everything's falling apart. That's the world of entrepreneurship. It's like everything's amazing. Then it's like, it's going to be gone tomorrow. And the up and down of that, to be able to level that out and for her to level that out and for me to be able to look back and be like, I was in college, I was broke, I was happy. It's not the end of the world. Those are things I think that we deal with that we just don't talk about amongst ourselves too often.
It's good that you have an Eli Manning in your life.
Yeah, right?
Just keeps things like nice and flat, even keel, smooth things out, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, might look lost on the sideline a little bit, but ultimately it's going to win the championship against the best in the world, right? That's going to happen. That's exactly it. Because if she was like me, like, oh my goodness, 3 out of 7 days a week would just be a train wreck. Right? Of us with our emotions. It's like she levels me out. But at the same time, I think I bring ideas and energy and just, I think, creativity that allows, she's really grateful for the energy that comes with that. We're fortunate. We're fortunate to have that combo to be able to do that together. Really cool to have an operating partner that you can work with that balances you out and where both of you are doing what you're made for to keep everything moving forward. Oh, totally. So given your experience, let's say that happened to you in your business tomorrow. Yeah. Just disappeared. Everything just disappeared. How would you handle it differently?
It's a great question because I ask myself this all the time. And so literally it's an exercise I go through every year because of that. Somewhere around July, I will convince myself that everything's going to go away at the end of the year. I'll convince myself of that. It's all going to go away. And what are you going to do about it? And then I say to myself, well, what would you want to do? Like I will literally have this psychotic conversation in my head. Like, what would you want to do? And I'd be like, I really always wanted to do this, or I always really wanted to write this book. I really wanted to start a community. I wanted to do this. And what I will do in July, anticipating everything going away, is I start creating the next thing. And that's what it is. So we just launched a very low priced membership. So we have levels of membership. And that's what it came from. It came from, okay, if everything went away and we didn't want to worry about money, and we didn't want to worry about, for instance, say you have a job and you lose your job. Now you lose that income. You lose 100% of your income. That's a big deal, right?
Huge deal.
Let's say you go into consulting and you have 5 clients. Okay. Now you're not in the job anymore. You're on your own. But still, if you lose one of those clients, it's 20% of your income. Still, right? That's going from an A to a B or B minus, right? That hurts. So what happens if you go to 100 people that pay you at say it's a lower price point? Well, if I lose one of those, it's more ego than anything. Like I run a community. There's 100 people. If one person leaves, it doesn't make a difference money-wise for me, but it's ego. Like if Mike's in my community and Mike decides to leave, I go, Mike doesn't like us anymore. That's a bummer. That's an ego thing more than a financial thing. And then the next level was, what if there's 1,000 people, right? It's Liz Wilcox, who we both met. What if there's 1,000 people paying me $10 a month or 2,000 people paying me that? Am I going to worry about anybody leaving? Right? This comes from my psychotic nature from the past, right? Of losing all. No, I'm not going to even think about that. And it's going to be very easy to replace. So that's what we decided the next level every year. Let's start something like that can grow to thousands. And it gives you fragmented income that is not so dependent on any one thing. And that's a fascinating thing to me because as you watch that grow and as you watch it grow with affiliates and you watch it grow word of mouth and you go, people are just signing up and I've already done the work for it. I've never realized you can make income in this way. So each year I talk myself into it's all going to go away. And guess what happens, Mike? It doesn't all go away. And then you wind up having multiple levels of income from all different areas because the worst didn't happen and you've built the next thing. So it forces me to build the next thing without the pressure of like desperation.
Yeah.
So sometime in a couple of months, I'll say it to myself, it's all going to go, what am I going to create next? And there'll be another level that will build from it.
What's your process for creating space to give yourself the time to go through this kind of practice, reflect, build? How do you create space for yourself to be able to do this kind of deep work?
Well, I'm going to give you the credit for this one. You know that, right? I don't even know you just gave me a softball because we were at the mastermind a couple of weeks ago and you asked me a question about, because our business is Total Life Freedom. And you asked a rhetorical, like, hey, how does somebody build total life freedom? And I said to you, it's a bad question.
Yes,
right?
you did.
I said because I'm like, I need something more specific.
But then you made my day and you sent me a text saying, actually, it was a pretty good question.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say, because at first it's kind of like, because a lot of people ask generic questions. What do I do? Like, well, you got to tell me more so I can help you. But when you said that, where do you start? It forced me to really think. And I don't know if I told you at lunch or was it later? I think it was at lunch. I think my head was spinning. And I said, well, here's what we did. And this is the answer to the question is when we started this level of our business, which is we run masterminds, we have online community, we have a school to go with that. We have courses, we have coaching, we have live events. There's probably 8 to 10 income streams that come with it from this one idea of total life freedom. The entire thing started 5 or 6 years ago by me saying, I want to build this. And I want to build this multiple 6-figure business as a solopreneur, meaning I don't want employees, I don't want overhead, but I want to do it in 2 days a week. It's almost like Apollo 13, right? They have all this crap if you watch this movie and they go, we got to fit all this stuff into this one thing, make it happen. It's like, oh my goodness, how do we do that? That's exactly what we thought. That was the plan because I was a newspaper photographer many, many years ago. And we started a wedding photography business. And I realized we made more money in 1 day a week than I used to make in a month. Doing the same exact skills, with the same exact skills, using the same exact equipment, shooting the same type of pictures, just for different clients. So if I make $4,000 a month, working 22 days a year, and I can do one wedding for $4,000, I just freed up 21 days a month. That's a big revelation to have in your life. So we did that. But eventually I was like, I don't really want to be doing this anymore. And we did other stuff. We shot a lot of sports. I traveled the country, shooting major events, all that type of stuff, corporate work. but I wanted to get into this space. I had a conversation with a DJ at a wedding and I coached him through his business. He was a great DJ, but he was terrible at business. Very many artists are great at their art. They're terrible at business. And after that hour-long conversation, I said, that's what I want to do for a living. So Mike, we got a 6-figure wedding photography business. I don't have to work 20-something days a year. Life is good. And I'm like, I go home to my wife and I say, I want to stop. I don't want to do this anymore. Now, most people would be like, you're out of your mind. And my wife said, okay, what are we going to do? And we're not going to kill it immediately. I'm not dumb, but within the next year, I want to wind this down. So I said, I don't know, but I had a conversation with a guy tonight. And I said, I want to do that for a living. I want to have conversations for a living. It all started with that. How do I have conversations for a living? But when I decided upon that, I said, I want to have conversations for a living, but I only want to be required to do this 2 days a week because I know I need to have time to to network with people, to create content, to hang out with the kids, to be able to just wind down. I know what's going to happen if I do this over a 5-day work week. I'm going to burn myself out because I'm going to wind up working 6-7 days a week, and I'm going to lose all the freedom that I ever wanted in my life. I know how it's going to work if I let it happen.
Yep.
So I said, can we build it to where all the work that I need to do for other people is done within 2 days a week? And that's how it started. So basically Mondays and Tuesdays is when you can get my time. Now figure it out. That's the hardest part. But once you say that, I'm going to do it in these 2 days a week. Now figure it out. It's Parkinson's law. Time expands to what you allow it to be. The work expands. Well, I couldn't take coaching clients on Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. I couldn't do group. I had to do it all. And guess what happened? Everybody adjusted to my schedule. If they wanted it, I served like crazy. But if people wanted my time, it happened during those days. If I do group coaching, if I do masterminds, if I do one-to-one, all within those days. And an amazing thing happened that in a very short period of time, a 6-figure business was built 2 days a week on my schedule. And what happened was if the kids get sick, if I'm tired, if something's going on, I have freedom the rest of the week to kind of unwind or figure things out. But I could also, in that time, write books. I could also have 2-hour conversations with people that change my life. I can also agree when Jody Mayberry says we have a mastermind in Orlando in 2 weeks that I could just plunk down the money and be gone for 3 days because I've created that time.
Right.
In that time comes all of the experience and all the opportunities. But most people block off all their time in work that they miss out on all the opportunities. So that's how it was done.
So you highlighted a couple of things. One, the importance of blocking time. 2, the importance of being aware of what time you're interested in blocking out, like whether it's a daily or weekly or hourly. What about the creative process? Like if I say, what's the creative process? How would you respond to that? What's your creative process, I guess?
Some of it's structured and a lot of it is completely based on how I'm feeling because it's kind of a combo. Like you mentioned before, like me and Elizabeth, like my personality and hers, we had a great, Jim Knight was a guest on our community and he talked about the band U2. It was a great analogy to it. And he said, who do you remember? Who do you know from U2? And it's generally Bono and The Edge, the singer and the guitar player. Well, there's 2 other guys in the band that nobody else knows about. One of them, I think his name is Adam Clayton. I'm not sure what the other guy's name is, but it's the bass player and the drummer. Well, the way he described it was the bass player and the drummer are just as important to that band as the singer and the guitar player are, but you just don't know who they are. And their job is to do the same exact thing every night. That's what they strive for, to keep the beat exactly the same every single show. Bono and Edge are completely different. Those guys keep the beat. Bono and Edge want to go off cuff. They don't want to play the same songs. They want to try different things. If everybody was like Bono and Edge, that band would be a disaster. It would be, and if everybody was like the drummer and the bass player, it would be boring. But when you have that combo, that's where the sweet spot is. Same thing with our relationship. Elizabeth has hers. I have mine. Same thing with creativity. I have certain periods of time where I'm required to do creative work. When I'm going to record lessons for our school, when we're going to do that. But there's also, I want the freedom of waking up at 5:30 in the morning and being like, that conversation with Mike really got me going. I'm going to go spend 2 hours writing a blog post on that, but it's not scheduled. I need both of that in my life because it's just scheduled. I don't feel very creative. I feel like more of a cog.
Have you come across one thing on the bass player thing? I can only name 3 bass players: Flea, Michael Anthony, and Gene Simmons. Those are the 3 that jump out at me. But so when it comes to the creative side of things, have you ever run across someone who just says, I'm just not creative?
All the time.
How do you help them overcome that?
By having conversations. That's why I love it, because people are way more creative than they give themselves credit for. They're creative in their own ways. Creativity does not mean being somebody that draws stuff. There's creativity in every way. There's creativity in tech. There's creativity in structure, right? There's creativity in everything. And when you can figure out what your creative space is, that's what you own. That's what you own, and that's your niche, and that's where you stand out. When people say that, it's so limiting when they say that. And I don't know where they learn it from. Creativity, every kid thinks they're creative when they're 4, and by the time they're 10, they don't. And I bash the school system on that. I really do, because it beats it out of you. When you're 8 years old and you're looking out the window and you see something really interesting, your teacher tells you to stay on task. But I'm really interested in that thing outside. I don't care what you're interested in. We stay on task. And guess what happens? After a while, the kid realizes, well, that what I'm interested in doesn't matter. And even if they don't even like what's going on in school, day by day, their creativity gets sapped from them. They wind up going to some college and wind up taking some job. And then at 36 years old, they come to me and they go, I hate what I do. I make great money. I hate what I do, but I have this drive to do this thing. And often it comes back to what their childhood interests are. Yeah. And they don't know how to bridge that gap. And part of what I do is help them bridge that gap, because it's always been there, and they will go to the grave with regrets if they don't do it. And they don't even care about the money at that point. But that's what this system a lot of times does to us. It takes the creativity out of us. So
let's talk a bit about your son and his affinity for bugs. Mm-hmm. And what was the first bug that he wanted to bring into the house that you guys decided, no, that's probably not a good idea?
When he was 4 years old, when Andrew was 4 years old, we asked him what he wanted for Christmas. And he said he wanted a tarantula. And we said, no, you're not getting a tarantula for Christmas. And then we said, what else do you want? And he looked at us, he said, a scorpion. I said, that's not where I was going with this. So we were thinking a football, right? Or something. Always, it's been his interest. So we would encourage it, and we would go out and he would catch these things. And I remember his projects, that he would always work on would be bug related. And it turned out that he got made fun of a lot for it, because it's different than most kids. But what happened over time is, even if some of the kids made fun of him, and I told him, being weird is cool. Like, being weird, like, who wants to be normal? And so some kids would say, like, you're weird. And I would teach him, say, thank you. And he would say, thank you. And like, what do you mean, thank you? Like, why would I? And he would say, like, at 9, why would I want to be normal? And then the kid would be like, they didn't know how to respond to that. They're looking for a dig, and they're like, he's actually right. Why would we want to be normal? So we would go through this. And then so over time, he wound up having conversations with adults. And I'll never forget, he didn't want to play baseball anymore. He was playing baseball. He was good, but he didn't want to play anymore. And his brother, Nolan, was playing baseball. And Nolan goes out on the field, and there's all these kids in the same uniform, none of them really standing out, Nolan included, but they're playing a game because everybody plays the game. And that's what you're supposed to do. When you wear a uniform, you look at everybody else. Well, Andrew's over on the side looking for bugs and animals. Well, he finds a snake. So he finds a snake and he brings it over. And all of a sudden I hear people yelling and hooting and hollering. And so there's Andrew at 10 years old, and he's holding a snake, and he's got 25 kids surrounding him. He's got 5 adults surrounding him. They're all asking him questions. He's teaching everybody. The parents are engaged. And I'm like, that's leadership. That's leadership, because he followed what he was interested in. He didn't get stopped because people made fun of him. And all of a sudden, with all these groups of kids while we're there doing the same thing, not really standing out, there's one kid that didn't listen to everybody, followed what he was interested in, and now developed a crowd around him. And then he wound up, bringing the snakes and the tarantulas to tourist places, and he gets $300 a night in tips. And then he winds up doing birthday parties. He just got hired for an event at a school to teach the kids about this. And he's basically an expert in this stuff, and he keeps learning, and he's teaching all age groups about something that only happened because he followed what he was interested in.
And is he having fun doing it?
Oh, he loves it. Yeah. His only hurdle right now at 17 years old is like, he battles with the whole, do I want to be the bug guy? Do I want to be that? So he's having internal struggles with that. He's got a gold mine on his hands, but we're not pushing him, because he literally has people that would sign up for a membership with him, but he's not full steam ahead on it, because I think he's dealing with the stuff that I think 7-year-olds would have dealt with in terms of social stuff. He's dealing with more at that age. So we're just keeping back and encouraging him. We'll see where it goes. But I mean, if he wants it, he could own it. It's a wild world.
17 is a tough year. I forget, how old are your other kids?
17, 15, 11.
Yeah. So we went through 17 for the first time only once, which makes sense. It was when Sean, who's our 20-year-old, turned 17. And I remember I was down at at the University of Arizona, which I usually don't say out loud because it's my nemesis school as a Sun Devil, but I was down at U of A and was speaking in front of a group of college students. And it was, I think Sean was 16 at the time. And I shared that I've got two kids, 16 and 13. And one of the girls in the front of the class said, "Oh, 17 was such a horrible year." And what, why? So we went a little bit deeper into the what and the why behind it. Ultimately, 17 was the year where we were like, I don't know if Sean's going to make it, because there's so many different things that are going on. So many questions that are driving, they're getting out there and they're doing all of those things. So 17 is one of those years where a lot of transformation kind of happens as they go through it.
And I remember it, that you're questioning everything. You're questioning yourself. There's a lot of image that goes with it. Everybody's like, I want to be young again. I don't envy it. I wouldn't want to be going through that. I enjoyed it, but it was also probably some of the most stressful times just mentally to figure out who you are. So yeah,
a lot of those years are just deeply repressed for me. I just have them like, they're just kind of boom.
There's a whole nother industry that can be built. There's a whole industry that can be built around people that have their 17, 18-year-old years repressed that needs to come out. Absolutely. So
let's talk about that. Like the cool thing about the story is there is something that you're passionate about, that when you share that with the world, you will find, and you will find others who are passionate about it, and other people who are just interested will find you. Is that fair?
Oh, without that. And there's the other aspect of it. There are people that will not care, and there are people that will hate it.
Yes.
And you've got to be able to accept that, and you've got to be able to embrace that. Because as Andrew is an example, when he's out there with snakes and tarantulas, he will attract, like, it's not middle of the road. It is people that are just completely fascinated, or they're frightened and fascinated, or they're absolutely repulsed where they will yell at him. What are you doing? Why would you bring that here? So he has to deal with that. Most of us in our industries don't have to deal with that, but we do have to deal with people that don't get it, don't ever want to get it, don't understand it. A lot of times it's family members, don't appreciate what you do, right? And we get derailed by that because we post something and our mother-in-law makes a comment. Your mother-in-law is not your client. And don't let your mother-in-law's comment derail you from doing what you want to do. And I truly believe in Kevin Kelly, talked about 1,000 true fans.
Yeah.
If 1,000 true fans that will pay you $100 a year, $100,000 a year, doing what you love to do, you don't need a giant fan base to do it. You need to just do what you love and attract the right people. It doesn't have to be huge numbers to do it. I don't think a lot of people think of it that way. They think I need a big giant audience. I need a big giant business. You don't. And when you can realize that, the beautiful part is if you can create those 1,000 true fans, it's not just them paying business-wise, just paying $100 a year. It is all the other options that you can offer to them and people around them that can expand that exponentially.
So let's talk about that gap between idea and action.
Yeah.
How do we shrink the gap between idea and action?
It really comes down to the second word. It's action. It's imperfect action. The amount of people that will come back to me like, how's the book doing? I'm still working on it. A year later, like, what are you planning to live to your 800? Like, how long you plan to, like, you're acting like these years are seconds or they're days, they're years. And how many years do you have to actually do what you want to do? I'm Mr. Magoo. If you remember Mr. Magoo, the cartoon guy, He was completely blind and clueless, but he kept moving. He kept walking and he would fall, and he would always fall and wind up in a good spot. He always wind up in a better spot. But it's the people that don't. Their vision's too good, right? And they could look ahead and they could be like, oh, way down there, there's danger. And then over there, there's danger. And they wind up taking no steps. When you can't see that far ahead and you can just see what's right in front of you, you just take those next steps. That's been my main cause for success. To be quite honest with you, it's like, I'm okay failing. When I started in photography, because that was what I did for 20 years, I failed before that immensely. I dropped out of college 5 or 6 times. I had been arrested. I was a complete failure. And at 22 years old, when, I had a nightmare about being caught stealing because I was a thief as well, I went downstairs at my parents' house and I was like, what am I doing with my life? And my dad came downstairs and he said, 2:00 in the morning, he said, well, you like sports, you like traveling, you like taking pictures. Why don't you become a sports photographer? It was that simple. I didn't even know it was a job. Didn't even know. Nobody in school told me you can do that for a living. I was never told that. So I look at the newspaper the next morning and it's like, somebody got paid to take this picture. Like, how did they do that? So I decided that day I'm going to become a sports photographer. And I said to myself, I'm going to fail at this because my only history in my life was failure. It's the only thing I knew. But I said something and I was really proud that I said it later on. I said, I'm probably going to fail, but at least I'm going to fail at something cool. Because everything I had failed so far, hotel, restaurant management, everything that I went to school, I didn't care about. I did it because other people told me I can get a good job. So not only did I not care, but the fact that I didn't care, how am I going to put my full effort into something that somebody else told me would be a good job? I never will give full effort to that. But you tell me that my job could be in the dugout of the New York Mets, and that's my job. So I get paid for that night while the players are getting paid, and I'm in the dugout or on the sidelines with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I travel. That's my job. Guess what, Mike? I'm going to give you everything I've got. I am going to obsess on this. I'm going to study it. That's exactly what it's the first time in my life. And my parents are like, oh my goodness, I went back to college and now I'm an A student. I went from being an F student for 16 years to being an A student. Why? Because I finally cared about something. And that's what it was. So it's like I had to consistently take imperfect action every single day to learn what kind of film to use, to learn how to take a better picture, to learn how to not overexpose something, to learn how to treat somebody well, meaning, do I smile at somebody or do I act like I walk right past them because I'm so focused? No, the relationships in your life are what's going to open doors. So the ones who would just do their job and treat everybody like a jerk, well, they took good pictures, but nobody promoted them. Nobody recommended them. But the ones that connected people together, the ones that said hello, the ones that brought a coffee or a donut, the ones that asked about you, they're the ones like, hey, when a job opening came up, you should talk to him. We'd like to work with him or her. All these things I had to learn by doing it the hard way because I didn't do that at first. I was a ruthless journalist, had to get the picture because somebody else would step in front of me. Eventually, with every bit of new information, I get better and better. And that's how it happens. And
at one point, you decided you wanted to shoot the Pope.
One point I was going to shoot the Pope. I did shoot the Pope, but we'll take that with the context. We can tell that story if you want.
Share the story. And then I want to get into the network and connection in that piece. But share the story about shooting the Pope.
Yeah. So in the very beginning of my career, I'm trying to build a portfolio. And I'm in New York and I'm working as a waiter in a place called the Spare Rib on Long Island. And I noticed that the Pope is coming to New York City. Man, this would be really awesome for my portfolio if I got a picture of the Pope. So I go to my boss. It's Saturday. He's coming to New York. And I go to my boss and I say, I need to have off on Saturday. And he said, I can't give you off on Saturday. It's a pact. That's when we need all waiters and waitresses on hand. I'm like, so I went home the next day and I watched the news and they're talking about the route that he's going. And so I go, I got to have off on Saturday. I go on Thursday. I tell him that. He goes, I can't give you off on Saturday. I told you that yesterday. And I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, I got to find a way to not work. So I come back on Friday. It's Friday afternoon and it's lunch hour and the place is packed. And I walk up to my boss. I don't even clock in yet. I go right over to him, middle of the dining room, and everybody's working, all the waiters and waitresses. And I walk up to him and I'm very aggressive at this point. I go, I need to have off on Saturday. And he looks at me and he's just so frustrated with me. And he goes, why do you need off on Saturday? He finally asked me. And he said to me, he goes, I can't give you off on Saturday. Why do you need off on Saturday? And he raised his voice. So I raised my voice right back at him. And I just yelled. I said, I need to go shoot the Pope. And silence. And I look around, I see everybody with their mouths wide open. And he's looking with his mouth wide open. And sweat is like going down his head. And I hear like silverware dropping. And I see my coworker behind me staring at me with his mouth wide open. And I'm like, what are you people doing? What is going on here? And then I realized what I said. And I said, no. I need to go photograph the Pope. And everybody just started laughing. And he starts laughing and he puts his arm around me and he goes, I can't deal with you. He goes, go shoot the Pope. And then the next day I went and I shot the Pope and I got a picture for my portfolio and it wasn't very good. And I had to keep learning and I kept growing.
So what was the lesson you learned about the photo? Because you share the story in the book, about your photo and where the Pope is, and then the photo of the Pope that actually makes it on the front page of the paper. What did you learn from that?
I learned that no matter how hard I try and no matter how hard I push, that will only get me so far. That can get me in the door, right? By being that aggressive. But what I learned was what the other photographers had that I didn't have was access. They had access. They had permission. They had press passes. They had connections. They were invited into St. Patrick's Cathedral. They were invited to be in front of the church. And what happened was I got a picture from afar of the Pope mobile, tiny in my frame. You could I could tell you it's the Pope, but you wouldn't know it's the Pope. And they had pictures of the Pope waving and hugging and kissing and these amazing, like lifelong portfolio images. And the main difference between the two of us is they had access and I didn't. And I learned right then, like I can push and push and push all I want. But if I don't know who the people are, if I don't know who the people that are hiring is, if I don't know who the people in that world is, I'm never going to make it anywhere. So like I said before, like every step is a lesson to learn. If I don't learn from those lessons, I'm going to be that person that's doing it for 20 years. And I'm like, just can't get ahead. Just can't get lucky. No, you just don't learn everything. This interview today is I'm learning stuff. I'm learning the way that you communicate. I'm learning the way that I communicate. I'm doing everything to not only give the best conversation I can give, but to make the next one better as well.
So let's talk about connection and the importance of connection and collecting people and building those relationships. How has connection helped you over your career?
Oh, the connection. And that's why the book, right? The Wealth of Connection. It has been the number one catalyst and door opener and relationship creator than anything. I can be proud of my content. I could be proud of what I record and write, but so little that matters without the right relationships and network in the world. The doors that have opened, the opportunities that have happened, the stories that I get to tell, it all comes from the connections that I've been able to make and the people that have been so generous to open up worlds to me. And then I figure it's my obligation now to do that for others. It's like you learn that. That's why I run a community for this. So you can bring people together. One person today, Justin Hertz, I'll have to shout him out. He messaged me this morning and he said, I have to tell you that by following the content in your book, what you taught me, I just made the biggest industry-changing, life-changing connection in my world that I possibly like life-changing connection for his real estate world. And I'm like, holy moly, like it's the intangibles. It's the soft skills. It's not these 7 steps of how to create something. It is how do you build a network and relationships around you that you help others get where they need to get to. They help you as well, but you do it in a win-win-win type of scenario where I'm not taking advantage of you. You're not taking advantage of me. We're growing together. And it's what I practice and I do every single day of my life, even when I'm not quote unquote working.
Yeah. What's the biggest mistake people make when they think about connection and networking?
Oh, there's a lot. That they don't need to do it until they need something. That it's just not. I know. Everybody thinks they said they know they do it, but they really don't. It's so often. And I'll give you a sports example.
Yep. When
I would shoot sports, when I would shoot football, I would always get a press pass, and I would often get an assistant pass, meaning I could take anybody with me on the sidelines. It's pretty cool. You get a phone call. It's like you're going to be on the sidelines, and Tom Brady's playing against Ben Roethlisberger. Pretty cool gig to be in the tunnel, right? But what would happen is, I would invite my friends. I would invite people in my life. I would invite people that are just a part of what I do. And then every single game, I would, on a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday, I would get a message from somebody who I haven't heard from in forever. And they would say, hey, can I be your assistant on Sunday? And I'd be like, I can't, it's already, politically correct wise, sorry, it's already taken. Sure. But internally, I'm like, where were you 2 months ago when my kid was born?
Right.
Where were you just to check in and see how I was doing? Yeah. Where have you been in any aspect of my life except for when you want something? And you start seeing that. Like you start seeing that when, people's books are published, right? All of a sudden, hey, promote my book. I'm like, you would have been so much smarter to pretend that you liked me and sent me a message 2 months ago, just seeing how I'm doing, and then asked me. Even if you don't like me, even if you just want to use my network, don't be so short-sighted just to go ask just because you want something with no give, no connection, no relationship. So many people are so short-term thinking when it comes to connections and relationships. So short-term. I mean, that's one of many, but it's like, keep in touch with people, follow up with people, actually genuinely be care about what's going on in people's lives with no expectation that you're going to get anything ever. When you can do that and you can say, this is what I say to myself. If I do think that way, 3 years from now, something great's going to come from this. 3 years from now. But I need to keep in touch with them. I need to connect them to other people. I need to like what they do. I need to support their book when it comes out. Do all the things that I would wish other people would do for me. Do it for them first. Really that simple. But it requires us to get out of our short-term, I need this today thinking to do it.
it is so simple, yet many times the simple stuff is hard to do from a time perspective, a prioritization perspective, a giving ourselves space perspective. Mm-hmm.
Because everybody says it can't be that easy. No, it is that easy. If you just keep in touch with the people in your life and you think, like, what are their goals? How do I help them achieve their goal? What does Mike want? Does Mike want to get on more podcasts? What do people in my life want? You will get more goodwill and more referrals without even asking for it. All of a sudden, you're going to get an email in your inbox of, I want to connect you to this person. They want to hire you because I was talking about you. I didn't have to sell anything. Right. I didn't have to ask you. That's how I prefer to do business anyway. Right. I don't want to be a pushy salesperson. Right. So if I can develop enough goodwill in all these areas of my life that it just comes to me, well, that's how I prefer to do it.
So why do you say pushy salesperson? Like, what's a pushy salesperson?
Oh, I come from the creative world, right? Writers, photographers, the people that hate selling. It's not pushy, but we think it is.
Yeah.
We think people offering what they do is pushy because as creatives, we shouldn't have to do that type of stuff, right? People should just love what we do. Well, that's just not the way that it works. Sales is a part of business. And there's a reason why a lot of these creatives have to go wind up working for somebody else is because they've never learned how to sell anything and they don't learn how to market and they don't want to, and they're actually offended by it. So they're offended when other people do it to them as well, right? The people that will not sell themselves also will not buy your stuff because they don't believe in it. It's a really weird combo. So I had to learn this because I was the same way. I was the creative artist that didn't want to sell until I realized create something that is more beneficial to them than it is to you. And you're proud of selling it. You're proud of talking about it. Because if you offer something that is of more value than what the price they're going to pay, why would you not want to share that with them? It's a hard thing for a lot of creatives to learn. Now, if you are consistent in following up, is that pushy? I used to think it was. I don't anymore because here's the deal. Mike, if you're offering me something and I say, no, you say, okay. But if you offer me something, I go, yeah, maybe in a couple months. And then you follow up and I go, yeah, I'm not quite ready yet. And then you offer again. I go, sounds interesting, but it's Christmas time. It's my fault. You're not being pushy. I've told you, follow up with me again. Follow up with me again. When I say no, now you've gotten an answer. I've learned as well, they want to do it, but they're not ready or they're not. It's your job to keep in touch with them. I learned a great stat. And one of the studies that I did for my school was that most people do not buy until they've been contacted at least 4 times about what they do. They have to hear about it 13 times, contacted at least 4 times, generally up to 7. Most business people, salesmen, will stop after 3 contacts. So right before people are ready to buy, 64% stop asking. They don't have to say yes. If they're saying maybe, it is your obligation to keep in touch with them. To me, that's not pushy. If you say no, and I ask you again, you say no, and I ask you again, you say no. Yeah, we're in a pushy stage. If they have not made a decision yet, you're losing out by not keeping in touch with them.
I think the thing that I see a lot of people struggle with around this, especially those who either have had a poor relationship with sales or a poor relationship with someone in sales, or this belief of being pushy, is that they're walking around with this creative thing that's going to solve all the world's problems. And they think they can just yell a little bit louder or say things a little bit louder or make it a bit more colorful, and it's just going to draw people in. The reality, and you hit the nail on the head in the book, and you hit the nail on the head with your story around Andrew, is there are people that this thing is there for. There are people who have the problem that you're solving for. There are people who have the pain that you're solving for. You're not out there creating problems or creating pain. You're revealing those problems, revealing pain, and then showing those people that there's a light, there's an answer on the other side. And then at the point in time where they're compelled to take action, then it makes sense. But they've got to be compelled. There's got to be something on their side. Imagine if you were the most creative tourniquet person in the entire world, and you were walking down the street and someone was bleeding out and they said, no, I don't want your help. No, I don't want your help. No, I don't want your help. Are you just going to let them bleed out, or are you going to figure out another way to help shift their perspective and realize that maybe it's time for a tourniquet?
Oh, without a doubt. The greatest, and I know you've dealt with this and we all have, is when that happens. And then afterwards they say, thank you.
That's it. Yeah.
Because they didn't see it.
Right.
I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
I've done the same thing. We're like, and I do it like, I'm so glad I did. But where I was in that spot, I didn't understand it yet. And there's a fine line because there is a bad name that gets put on it by sleazy marketers. They're out there, right? And they're selling crap stuff and they're selling it without good intentions. And my whole thing and my barometer of sales is always generous goals over selfish goals. Meaning I have selfish goals. I have things that I want to achieve. I have numbers I want to achieve. I have things that I want to do. But as long as what I'm doing is generous first, meaning what we're creating, price that we're doing, what we're offering, if it's more valuable to them than what we're charging for them, I am perfectly fine with all of my selfish goals that I have because it's all coming from a space of generosity where they're getting more than what they're paying for. As my friend Ken Hoop says, always make sure the client gets the better end of the deal. If you can do business that way, you will never feel bad for selling. You will feel like you have a solution for their problem. If they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. That's up to them. You got to be able to offer it and you got to be able to create it.
Yeah. It's not about, and I think, and you highlight this in the book, and Wealth of Connection is an awesome book. Go out there and pick it up. If you're thinking about how do I really work through what I'm meant to do, how I can get out in front of those people who I might be able to serve, how I might look at building out something next, pick up the book and work through Vince's process and the frameworks that he shares. There's a key, and it comes into that discussion that you shared around Andrew and that you've shared in this conversation around your ideal customer and understanding who this thing is for. If you're out there thinking that this is for everyone, all you're doing is creating noise in the marketplace. You're doing your customer a disservice. If you can be very, very refined and deliberate and direct about who it is for.
Yep.
And for Vince, it's about that person who wants to, the solopreneur, the person who wants to go out and build something and not have employees inside their organization. Then you can do it and be very focused and you will help others. And you know what's cool about it is some of the other people who are going to benefit from it, they'll catch on and they'll get it as well. And you might find out that there's some scope creep relative to ideal customer.
No, yeah, it's just the more clear you can get with that, the easier it is to explain and even to create content around it and connections. Like for me, for the solopreneur, it's like, I want to help you take one idea and turn it into multiple income streams around that one idea. Like a sports team, you go on a field and they're not confused, right? The New York Islanders are not confused, right? They know they play hockey. Sometimes they are, but they made the playoffs.
They looked a little bit confused in a couple of those games, but anyway,
business-wise,
I'm not going to dwell.
They go out to Belmont or wherever the new stadium is, and they're not saying, I'm going to go out to Hoboken and try to sell tourniquets. Where I'm going to go out to Long Island, way out in Suffolk County, and I'm going to sell ice cream cones. They go, no, we play hockey, and we play hockey on this ice in this arena, and we are going to create what we do for you. And you can come in any way you want. You can listen to it on the radio for free. You can buy the cheap seats. You can buy the expensive seats. You can go to fantasy camp. We'll have a price point for you from free to very expensive, but we play this game and this is what we do. And we are not confusing you with what we do. Like, you know, the logo, you know, everything. Same thing in my world. Same thing with solopreneurs, even worse, because so often we're one man or one woman show. Right. And 1 week we're interested in this. And then a month later, we want to do this. So many solopreneurs are ADHD, whether they're diagnosed or not. They have the tendencies, as do I. We're always attracted to the new thing. And when something starts getting normal or easy, we get bored with it. Instead, we should take that one thing and we should expand on the options to give us creativity, but not keep trying new things. Oh, I'm going to write a book on horses now, but I run a business on, SEO. We're confusing our own people and we're stretching ourselves so thin. And then we wind up having not success and we're burnt out and we wonder why. For me, to solve that problem is so easy in terms of my message. That's what I do. I'm not trying to do a million other things. Like you said, when you can be clear on that, when you can be clear on whatever it is that you do, and you can own that market and that space, and that's what you talk about, that's what you create on, that's who you help with, you're golden because you stay there. But if you start the Islanders start going out, like, I'm going to go out to Roslyn and I'm going to play cricket, you're fracturing yourself and your audience. And I think so many business owners do that.
So let's give folks a couple of questions that they can go through to help create that level of focus. And again, go read the book. We'll include links to the book in the show notes. Let's give people one thing that they can do next to create that level of clarity. And is there a question they can ask themselves? Is there some action that they can do to create that level of clarity around?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like it's not business. It is business wise, but it's not. It's one of the lessons in our school. One of the first ones is, what kind of life do you want 3 years from today? Not what kind of business do you want? What kind of life do you want? Start selfishly. What kind of life do you want? And if you go, crap, let me think. I don't really think about that very often because I'm so busy working. You might say, I do want to live in Florida, or I want to live in Arizona, or I always love the mountains. I always work my best from there. It's like, well, is part of your plan living where you really want to live? Is part of your plan, I want 3 days a week with clients and I want extra time so I can write the books that I want. Like, what kind of life do you want? I want to be able to be there, when my kids get on the bus and when my kids get off the bus. What do you want? What kind of life do you want? Because you're going to live happier that way. And when you can create the business around the life, as opposed to the life around the business, not only are you going to have a more successful business, but you're going to have a happier life. So every business decision we have made has been built on that idea, because it's almost like putting the ladder against the wrong building. And then you climb up that ladder and you go, that's awesome. I climbed the ladder, but I don't like the building. What kind of life do you want? I don't think that's talked about enough, because so many people I know build these successful businesses and they hate their life. I have a great business, but I don't like where I live. I don't like the way that I interact with my family. I don't like how much time this takes for me to do this. And I've always wanted to do this thing, but now I've created this to where I can't give up this income because it's too profitable, but my soul is being depleted because I can't even write that fiction novel that I've always wanted to write, that I want to be known for. So figuring out what kind of life that we want first with your spouse, figuring that out first, and then, then let's go create the business that builds around it. Maybe it's not what you're doing right now, but maybe it's what you're going to do in the evenings while you build out what you really want. And you can be like, hey, if I can do this 2 days a week, how do I create this? It all comes from the business creativity side of it to build that.
Vince, awesome conversation. Where can people find out more about what you're working on and connect with you directly?
Oh, thank you. It's all at the website, totallifefreedom.com. As you mentioned, the book, we love to be generous goals over selfish goals. We give away the audio version of the book for free. So it'll be on the website. I can give you the link if you wanted to share. If anybody wants the audio version, no cost. Also, we have a low price membership. It's a $9 a month membership. It's our no-brainer thing. We give away the first 2 lessons for that. And then we'll offer that to your group. That'll be at the website. I'll send it to you as well. If anybody wants it, you could just check that out and see if it's something that you're interested in. But totallifefreedom.com is where you could find everything.
Perfect. We will include links in the show notes. Vince, thanks for not getting into the note that you sent to me on a napkin in the middle of a hockey game earlier. Well, it was last month. It was really a depressing night. Actually, so Vince sent me a napkin that said 1983. And if you know the background on the Islanders and Rangers, when I was a kid, we used to chant 1940 in the Coliseum. And now 1983 is that number.
And I have to say, I feel bad because it was game 6. The Islanders were winning. I think they were winning 1-0 in that game.
They were.
I passed the note over from the restaurant, and the Islanders haven't scored since then. The Islanders
did not score since then. And not only did you negatively affect that game, but then Jody did a little bit later when he moved my phone or got in the way of my phone. So yeah, that was a rough way to lose game 6.
But at least you were with friends.
Yeah.
At least you were with friends.
It was a game 6 or game 5?
I think it was 6. I think it was in New York. Pretty sure.
Yep. And these are another one of the number of memories that I've repressed and have put behind me. And including, I was talking with Jacqueline Nicholson. She was on a recent podcast. We were talking about the game, and she brought up how the Canes had outplayed the Islanders. And I said, well, they had a little bit of help from the refs with a couple of the ways that they got in the middle of it. But we're all right. We're going to wrap this thing up.
You're not going there, are you?
I'm not.
I'm going to give a shout out to my friend John Miller. He wrote the book QBQ. I don't know if you know John.
I don't.
But you need to.
Okay.
He's a great guest. Great book.
Awesome.
But part of his book is you always have to be good enough to beat the ref. That's part of his book. So it's going to shoot down your ref idea. I actually want to make an introduction between the two of you guys because it'd be such a great conversation to have.
Do it. I would love to have him on. I will check out QBQ. I am a firm believer of control what you can control, and you control your attitude, your effort, and you get out there and you get the work done. The refs should not control this stuff. Sometimes they get in the way, you do have to beat the ref. If you know of someone who would enjoy this conversation, even if they're a Rangers fan, share it with them. Let Vince and I know via LinkedIn, Twitter, all the social channels. We like seeing those shares. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about your process?